Okay, let's get started here. It's 3 o'clock. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this webinar, Forensics-Driven Privacy Compliance for DPDP Act for the Digital Payments Ecosystem. As you would all know, in today's digital payment landscape, people are increasingly opting for digital transactions due to their convenience, accuracy, and instant availability, right? So this trend is especially beneficial for rural and unbanked populations. And today, as we move towards a cashless economy, while we are reducing certain risks and inconveniences associated with handling cash transactions, challenges around security and privacy have increased exponentially. Numerous stakeholders, including banks, payment gateways, and account aggregators, are saving and holding personal data, making it crucial to ensure secure payments. While the Indian Digital Personal Data Protection Act, commonly known as the DPDP Act, is a significant step to bring order to this chaos and safeguard the privacy of Indian citizens, it shouldn't impact operations of this large ecosystem that we have built. So how can the payment institutions continue to operate at the scale without compromising on security and privacy? Welcome to this webinar hosted by CISA, where we will delve into the evolving landscape of data privacy in digital payments and understand the key provisions of the DPDP Act. We will also explore some practical steps that organizations must take to stay compliant and secure in this new regulatory era. My name is Venu Nambiar, and I head the brand and marketing for CISA globally. I'm really pleased to be here along with my colleague and good friend, Ramakant Mohapatra.
Hi, good afternoon, friends. Nice to see you again, some of you in this gathering. Thanks for joining in for this session. I am Ramakant Mohapatra, heading the Data Protection and Governance Unit at CISA. And I hope I am pleased to be here with you to discuss on the DPDP aspects in terms of the data minimization and consent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramakant. So Ramakant is a seasoned leader in data privacy and data protection. He has over 25 years of experience in the IT, data privacy, and information security domain with a track record of developing and implementing privacy strategies. He has enabled business growth for large and small enterprises while managing privacy risks. He was also instrumental in providing the privacy recommendations for the Arogya Setu platform at the national level. He has been recognized as India's Privacy Leader of the Year in 2023 by the Data Security Council of India, NASSCOM, for his contributions. So before we get started, a few housekeeping rules. This webinar is for 40 minutes, including 5 minutes of Q&A. Since all attendees are on mute, I request those who have questions to please type them out in the chat window, and we shall address them towards the end of the session. I would also like to give a brief overview about CISA. CISA is a global forensics-driven cybersecurity solutions company. We specialize in securing the digital payments industry. We are one among the top 4 global payment card industry forensic investigators, and we leverage forensic insights to protect our 1,000+ customer organizations across 40+ countries. With deep expertise and commitment to innovation, CISA has been pioneering advancements in quantum security, hardware security, and cybersecurity for AI. Our dedication has been honored and recognized by the industry and media alike, including the Financial Express, DSCI, NASSCOM, Economic Times, and several others. So without much further deliberations, we'll dive into the webinar today. Let me start with a question, Ramakant, that we often discuss. With every digital transaction, with multiple banks and payment gateways, I am required to disclose my mobile number, email ID, PAN card, Aadhaar card, etc., etc. I'm really not sure if my personal data is confidential anymore. I've lost trust in almost every unknown caller reaching me out. So how do you think the DPDP Act, emphasizing consent and data minimization, will bring some checks and balances to help me, or rather the citizens, to rebuild this depleting trust? I think you're on mute, Ramakant.
Yeah, thanks, Venu. This is a very good question and appropriate for Indian digital journey and the payment industry. So as we speak, there are two aspects to that. So I'll break down the question into two parts. One is data minimization. Second one is consent. So as far as the DPDP is concerned, the law wants to give a lot of control to the users to what data they need to disclose, what they need to disclose, and how it has to be used, which is the basic fundamentals of any data collection. However, if we look back few years back, or maybe few quarters back, a lot of data was given for the KYC for getting into audit as a UPI payment processing in your own mobiles and own applications in your mobile phones. So having said this, KYC is required to be validated, to be identified, to be authenticated, to provide you the UPI gateway to do the payment transactions. But nevertheless, it should not happen that in order to provision you that service, which is the purpose of processing, the UPI gateways and the banks, they should ask n number of data elements to collect from you and provide you the service. So there are few data elements which is legally permissible, maybe for your Aadhaar card, PAN card, maybe bank account number and email IDs, for example, to be provided in order to enable you to get the KYC and proceed with your payment transactions. So hence, it is very, very important for the data processors, including the data fiduciaries who also process the personal data, should not ask or collect additional data elements which is not legally permissible, not required for any purpose. So as part of that, so a self-guided KYC automation has been institutionalized by many banks and payment industries. If you look forward that now we are having video KYCs, we are not visiting the banks. Second part is we are able to do a lot of KYCs on our own by taking our own photograph, giving fingerprints, digital signatures as well. So it is enabling the user control. So hence, I have the ability to control my data and how much I am giving. That is one aspect of the DPDP enabling the users to have their own control and do and provide what data is required. The second aspect is we should also understand that whenever we are giving any kind of data, we should read what is required. It is also users' awareness needs to be more prevalent, and we should understand that we are not supposed to give whoever asks any data or why they're asking, just like an asking for a data, right? So we should, as users, maybe knowledgeable users, informed users, we should also understand where our data is going, and hence we should be categorical in giving consent. That means our agreement, our agreeing for something that has to be processed. Keeping this in view, let's understand that why consent is required in India. Because as part of the data privacy regulation across the globe, there are different kind of processing basis, legal basis of processing, we call it. But India has primarily chosen to be consent-centric. Why is that? Because it depends upon the type of economy, our literacy rate, and our startup ecosystem, and we are in digital journey, and we are the fastest growing economy. Keeping all this in mind and understanding that we have rural populations more, and this particular law should reach to them to have control on their data. Hence, consent has been selected as one of the primary basis of data collection. Now, in order to provide the consent, it should be fair, and it should be managed by third party, neutral party, no bias in the connecting and collecting the data for the processing, and also ensuring that how the overall consent life cycle is managed. Starting from the collection, I can give the data, I can withdraw data, I can access, I can do a lot of changes, and I can withdraw from consent as well, right? So managing all that needs to be done fairly, unbiased, transparently, and also time to time. So hence there is a consent manager concept that comes in, which is a neutral party, which has to be registered with the Data Protection Board of India, and who fairly does independent job without getting biased with the data processor or data fiduciary. So what does it mean for us? That means using of consent and consent manager, DPDP Act is giving us a kind of satisfaction, user trust and confidence that my data, my user data is at safe hands, and it is taken care with all the safeguards during the processing, either in transit or storage or transfer, right? So hence it builds user confidence, and it also makes sure that the user will adapt to this kind of digital journey and go on for UPI kind of payments and gateways.
Excellent. So if I understand this correctly, as a citizen, my trust as a user will be enhanced through collection of data only for specific purposes, and that through a dedicated neutral party named consent manager. Is that right, Ramakant?
Yeah, you are on the dot, Venu.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you. So now, before we dive into the next question, we have a poll question for our audience. Let us give this a minute. There seems to be one. Okay, there seems to be some technical. Oh, yeah, there it comes. Okay. Right. So shall we moving ahead? So thank you all for taking the poll. Now, Ramakant, back to you. Just another thing regarding the data fiduciary. So what contractual measures should a data fiduciary take with an authorized dealer who facilitate cross-border transactions for Indian consumers?
Thanks a lot, Venu. This is a good question in the payment industry, and a lot of different regulations that has been enacted by the Central Bank of India, that is Reserve Bank of India, in the recent past. So throwing some light on the DPDP, in the current provisions of DPDP Act, the cross-border data transfer has not been made very clear like the other regulations. However, it is giving a provision to identify the list of countries. We call it as whitelisted countries, where any data processor or fiduciary can transfer data with ease without any hurdles. But let's know that there are some challenges as well, because while the government is allowing that for ease of doing business with the safeguards and increasing the trade and commerce, and also ensuring that the more and more entrepreneurs in India should also do the data processing outside and vice versa. But there comes a challenge of the safeguard and security and consent of the data elements and also the data principles. So in order to have this, what has been done in the past, we should understand that any kind of data that we do, generally the sensitive data or the critical data should be thoroughly investigated and thoroughly analyzed. We can do third-party data transfer impact assessments and also ensure that adequate safeguards, either the technical in nature or it is process in nature, has to be abided by all the data fiduciaries and processors in India who are sending the data or who are operating Indian data being outside as well. So giving the example of Reserve Bank of India, sometime back had led one process that all the payment transactions has to be stored in India within 24 hours. That means the localization of the payment transactions. Let's understand why it was called for. It is not something that it is easy for the banks and for the financial transaction processing entities to abide by that rule. But given that a lot of research has gone through and Indian Reserve Bank and the Indian government were not able to provide the adequate resolution in time and fairly to all the payment related frauds which happens in India, but the data is stored outside else. So hence, in order to provide and build a customer trust and also provide their citizens the light and the expected resolution time and fairness, so Reserve Bank of India, with due regards, they have implemented this so that the payment data is stored. That means one copy of the payment data is stored in India, which will ease in the investigation, faster resolution of fraud-related activities. Number two, it also will aid a lot of discipline and also ensure that a lot of financial transactions can be well regulated, also can be well monitored as and within the premises of the financial landscape.
So what I infer is that today it is far easier and faster to investigate if I can call it fraud, in a cross-border payment transaction because of the enforced data localization of transaction. Is that right?
Yes.
So this is definitely reassuring. Now, the next one is everybody's favorite word, right? AI. It is no longer a buzzword for sure, and is now it has seeped into the various facets of and aspects of life. So many companies, many payment companies, to be specific, use AI and machine learning for fraud detection and risk assessment. Could you share your views on the use of AI and the associated risks, and probably throw some light on the corresponding mitigation measures?
Yeah, thanks, Venu. This is the right question in the current AI buzz, agentic AI, this AI, that you can tell a lot of prefix comes in the world. It is around the world, not only that it's in India or payment industry.
True.
So giving the perspective, can AI be out of our lives? No. It is going to be there and it's going to be part of our life and moving on as the business get transformed, technology get transformed, and all the different processes get transferred in life and in the works. Same thing, AI is going to be one of the catalysts which was there. It is getting more and more active now in order to give a lot of benefits. But using AI responsibly is the key to the mantra and success of any enterprises, either it is data fiduciary or any kind of data processors. Why you say so? Because AI comes with a lot of different kind of algorithms that are used in order to faster the processing, give insights, and ensure that whatever we want, either in health industry, financial industry, or other industries, gives a lot of insights and make our life easy. While it makes our life easy, it comes with its negative as well. That means it will not handle properly. It will give a loss and lot of perception in the human mind that AI is taking my job. For example, AI is trying to do something which I don't want. I do not have control over my data. I do not know what is happening, who is doing what, including the smart TV and smart refrigerator, whatever you can say, right? So now, in order to address all that, there are different ways, different kind of fiduciary they should look at. But however, there are a few things that is best practices from my practitioner view, implementing some of these are that we should understand that we should be responsible for using AI. So hence the responsible AI concept has been kicked in. So while we tell responsible AI, what does it mean for us? That means when you use a lot of algorithms, which are open source based, no one has a control on that. So we should ensure that a lot of community versions of the AI that can be used in order to have a control. While saying so, we should understand the accuracy levels. The data accuracy levels of output also is measured. It is always getting refined and refreshed and enhanced so that the false positives so and so should be minimized. Hence, the risk in identifying something wrong is down. While risk is down, but there are some risks. So we should understand that we should inform the data principals or the users whose data is being processed through AI that these are the algorithms I am using, and hence I may land into some issues because I have only accuracy level of 90%. I am doing 1, 2, 3 in order to mitigate the risk, and I will ensure that your data is safe and being safely processed. So while we say so, there also comes the other kind of challenges that what is the data ethics? Does AI process the data ethically? We never know. There are any number of different kind of business challenges that might be there where we do not do that. For example, taking all the details and selling to someone else for a commercial price. So that is something that not allowed. It is data ethics. The another point challenges comes under profiling. So as of now, all the social media platforms, including the payment banks, all of them want to do a lot of profiling, a lot of demographics, a lot of insights so that they can increase their footprint, they can increase their business, they can increase the number of customers base. So that is nothing which cannot be laid out. It has to be there, it will be there. But in order to ensure that we do not get into the rattle race of getting non-compliant by using AI, so we should ensure that we have something called transparency and explainability. So transparency means you tell the user that I am using this algorithm. Based on the algorithm, I will be able to process your data in this way. These are some things I will take care. Same thing, take and consent. Tell them that I am using this data and I will ensure that it is safeguarded. And this is how I will safeguard your data. And I am not doing any kind of algorithm bias or discrimination while doing some data from India, some data from US, maybe say different kind of citizens. and also ensuring that I have something called data ethics, and also ensuring that the communication is done properly and recorded. So while we take sum up all this into AI, finally the risk is we should ensure that we are not biased, we are not discriminating anyone based on the caste, creed, or different kind of demographics, and we are using the right set of algorithms, which also gives us a lot of different kind of parameters to enhance, and never use real data in your training models of AI or MMLs. Right? So while we do that, we do not know. Sometimes it will happen in such a way that reflection will happen, and we'll see that a lot of data is also lost. So this is something from my point of view, Venu.
Excellent. Thanks, Ramakant. So, data fiduciaries and processors should implement responsible AI to ensure the three what you pointed out was fairness, transparency, and ethics, and probably the minimizing the algorithm bias, right? So this definitely I feel is going to help increasing the AI adoption rate and acceptability as well by users, right? So yeah. So now let's shift gears a bit here. Let us move into something that is again giving organizations sleepless nights, and that is a data breach. In the event of a data breach under the DPDP Act, what is expected is rapid and accurate assessment is extremely crucial. So how do you think organizations can benefit from digital forensics and forensic insights as a proactive measure, both for security as well as compliance?
Yeah. Thanks, Benu. It is very apt now that because the number of breaches are increasing and the penalties are paramount on all the data fiduciaries. We have seen in the past where Apple paid and Google paid penalties in Europe.
Absolutely.
So evidently, it is coming as a thing that we have to minimize the breach. Although we cannot tell there will be zero breach, but always we will try to minimize our liabilities. So giving an example of in the health sciences, that why do the doctors prescribe a lot of diagnosis tests, or they go in deeper and deeper, right? The philosophy is to identify the pinpoint, the root cause at the nail, so that they can prescribe the best medicine or best treatment to get cure or manage the situation. So giving that connotation here, so whenever we have something called breach, anyway, we have different kind of breach analysis tools are available. You can say that there are experts available. But however, if we go into the details of forensics, we have to know from the day one of the breach and till when it is occurred, right? So sometimes people get in misaligned, telling that I have to start where I start. No, you have to start what impacted. From there, you have to trace back, start doing the forensic insights analysis to identify what has happened, what are the assets that were those who were impacted, what are the different data elements that were causing, who are the actors who are participating in that during that time. And either it is cloud or it is third-party systems or it is your own systems, you have to identify the different areas. You have to pinpoint to which folder, which file, which user, what data element, what IP address, and what has been done, what activities has been done. So hence a lot of audit trail details analysis, a lot of log details, and it cannot be done without forensic experts or forensic kind of tools. So getting there, it will give a lot of insights in order to identify and pinpoint the location where it has happened, whether it is cloud, it is on-prem, which server, which location, XYZ. Second thing, it will give what were the sequence of events, what has gone wrong, what are the different parameters that have been passed. Whether it has been done from outside, someone has started invading in your network or in your systems, or it never knows the insider who is also creating some problems. Because according to the research, insider threat is more than 30% of the overall breach creators, right? So hence, that is important to know. Now, second thing is, since we will know more and more insight through forensic analysis, it will give us also the futuristic view that what are the root causes in our system or our ecosystem we should minimize. We should put some permanent fix in order to avoid the recurrence in the future. That is very important. So in my opinion, from my experience, it is very easy to tell, I'll put some database management system, some processes, and will do that. But nevertheless, it is not sufficient unless you do a detailed study using the forensic sciences and insights to even know that who has been gone inside that lab or who has gone inside that particular system, maybe fingerprint that is there, or your ID card, or even your facial recognitions. These are some things which has to be studied in order to pinpoint and take appropriate action. For example, suppose you identify someone who is in your company who has created that fraud, but without having the details of understanding that he is that particular person through the forensic and the facial recognition, biometrics, XYZ, and having sufficient proof and evidences, you cannot sack him. You cannot take any action on that. So in order to give more insights, so it is very, very important for all the fiduciaries and all the data processors who are processing personal data, very important to understand what is the data breach, what is forensic analysis, forensic insights, which will not aid one time. It will also prevent you to recur those kind of breaches or those kind of losses, and also will ensure in future how you can breach it better and you can do it better.
Interesting, Ramakant. Thanks for that. So this actually shifts the focus from simply forensics to forensic insights, and it also adds the proactive element of vulnerability identification, right? So I'm so glad to hear that forensic insights has so much relevance and traceability in data breaches and its analysis. Well, you and I have discussed this a few times, but I would still like you to address this for the benefit of our audience. In recent interactions with customers, with our clients, some of them have said that they fall under the data processors category, where the DPDP Act does not impose any direct obligations. What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, thanks. I think this is a debate and this is a lot of discussion during my interaction with the customers and when I take some sessions for them or provide some consultations. So yes, you are right that DPDP Act doesn't state any direct kind of liabilities or imposition of any penalty on the data processors. But that is because of a cause and because of the type of country India is and type of ecosystem we have, type of processor, startup driven growth. So hence what has happened here, and the processors are different categories. We have a lot of unstructured processor, undefined, many things that we process. They also process their own data. For example, suppose you go to any Aadhaar center in order to enroll your Aadhaar or update your Aadhaar, you can see that a small guy within one laptop will be sitting there. He may not be classified as one particular data processor as such, but he's authenticated. His identity has been verified. He's authorized to do the Aadhaar authentication update by the government of India. So we cannot tell that he doesn't belong to the processor category. But however, giving that, should he be implicated by doing wrong things? Yes, he can be implicated because he cannot do whatever he wants. So hence what has happened in this particular one, so the contractual obligations has been laid with the data fiduciary. So the Indian DPDP Act has ensured that somewhere the liability has to be 100% there. So what they have done for ease of Indian economy, Indian process and developing country, they have added that particular one point of liability at data fiduciary, whoever the guys who are giving the instructions and contracts to others, the data processors. However, it is the responsibility of data fiduciaries to ensure that same level of contracts, same level of liabilities are passed on as part of the binding and legal contracts to the data processors. That is one aspect. The second thing is the data processors are nevertheless less looked forward because they are the guys who are also processing personal data. Hence, all the technical and organizational measures that are required for data fiduciaries for processing has to be in similar nature being implemented in their ecosystem as well. And they are also equally responsible for intimating about data breach to the data fiduciaries in order that it is regulated, it is reported within 72 hours, and all types of breach can be regulated and can be reported. So in my view of what my view from the interaction is that we should never underestimate that I do not have direct implications, direct binding means I am let go free. It is not that. So hence, all the data fiduciaries, what they should do before engaging with any data processor, they should never forget to conduct a due diligence, third-party risk assessment to ensure that the party they are transferring the data build the user trust. Again, we go back to the user trust. They have to build the user trust and have the adaptability, you just look for working for the data fiduciary or are unrolling taking services from data fiduciary. So that is something that has to be there, and they have to have multiple and annual audits to ensure that the process is done, it is followed, and it is better identified early than never.
Yeah. So, actually, there's this leads to another question, something similar, I think. But Ramakant, what obligations do large enterprises, including including GCCs, include in their contracts to help them minimize the liability that can occur from their vendors and partners, and other partners? How does that come into play?
Okay, so in connection to the previous question, so I want to just elaborate and give some point of view from my real practices and practitioner point of view. So what needs to happen? So according to me, whoever processes the personal data is data processors. It is only contractual and the regulatory bifurcation that fiduciary processor in order to have that responsibility, accountability at different levels. So now coming back to the what we should do, what data fiduciary should do. So either it is in DPDPA Act or it is not in DPDPA Act. So if we follow the format of the privacy framework, so we should understand that for carrying out any work, there should be a contract. So that means there should be a strong binding contract between data fiduciary and data processor. That is number one. And there should be indemnity liability clauses that well articulated and binding in the contract. So that should ensure that covers the personal data breach as well and personal data liability. Third one, in order to provide any kind of outsourcing work, according to any kind of regulations, even Reserve Bank of India says so, that you have to do a third-party assessment and due diligence before you provide your select your vendor. And we should understand that what is the credibility of the vendor or the third party, meaning thereby whether they're ISO certified, they have different kind of certifications which are industry accredited. Another point is we should understand that whatever the data fiduciary is giving or outsourcing or the processing, they should ensure that the similar level of technical security and process controls are there in the data processor end. Otherwise, it will be no good because breaches will happen, means data fiduciary also will take care of that. So in order to bind the responsibility, they should understand that each individual who works for data fiduciary has to sign NDAs. There should be background checks as well, so that there is the guy who is doing, he is not an insider threat in order to cause any kind of damages. Another point is we should understand that we have to follow all the principles of data collection, that how it is collected, it should be called fairly, minimized, and then we should also understand that all the data is processed accurate and following the accuracy principle, either processor. Another point to understand here is that we should understand that all the transparency mechanism, consent, explicit consent, notice, everything is provided, and that is also done according to the requirement of the law. No data transfer across the borders, sectoral regulations, that also never to be undermined. In addition to that, we should understand that there is a data deletion, right to be forgotten clause. If it is asked by the user to the data fiduciary or data processor, it should be honored as well. And we should ensure that the aspect of data principles right. Sometimes I need to update my data. Sometimes I need to delete my data. Sometimes I need access to my data. So those things needs to be also encouraged, and also there needs to be processes that has to be done. And finally, the data audit, which you have to demonstrate that I am complying according to DPDPA Act or any kind of privacy regulations. We should ensure that we have enough demonstration of records of processing activities and sufficient audits, sufficient balance and checks and privacy governance to do that. We should never forget that privacy is a continuous journey. It is not one-time compliance activities. So that needs to be done. In order to have this, the biggest point that we need to understand, unless our folks within the organization, they have a privacy culture imbibed in them, they will not be able to understand and give the importance that is required to the processing, because they will be doing the processing. For example, in the bank, if the bank, all the bank staff, they don't know what is privacy and how they have to take care, how they have to talk to the customers, they should not collect some data, right? And the hard copy they have taken, they should put in some restricted folders. If they don't do all that, then it is very, very difficult to get into that. So one thing they have to, training and awareness has to be there on privacy principles you followed. For example, just giving away to the right to access data principal rights, all our rights as a bank user, bank customer, right? Suppose you must have seen that a lot of banks right now, what is happening there is that they have a service request queue. You must be seeing that you can go and apply for your own checkbooks. You can go and update your own address, own telephone number, right? And you can nominate. So all the kind of provision that has come, it is part of the service request is nothing but your data principal rights getting into some action there. So that is how the overall ecosystem works. And I think the data fiduciaries has to take more active step in establishing the contracts and doing a due diligence to ensure that the data processor to whom they're outsourcing gains the trust of the user and build the confidence among the ecosystem so that the privacy culture spreads and we are safe, our data is safe.
Excellent. Thanks, Ramakant, for that elaborate overview. And what I'm taking away is that the data fiduciaries are primarily accountable, right? They need to have the right tight legal binding contracts and the penalty provisions for data processors so that they can minimize their own liability and transfer risks, right? That's what you're getting at.
Yes,
so
yes.
Finally, I think we have a few more minutes left, but let me ask you the next question. What are the 3 key takeaways based on the numerous DPDP briefing sessions and the readiness assessments you have conducted for a large number of leading banks and fintech companies in India?
Okay, so I'll just give 3 takeaways so that it get consumed and people take it home. So one thing is, as we understand that we have to conduct a third-party risk assessment and due diligence before selecting any kind of data processor. Otherwise, we are at risk. That means we are not doing our job well. The second part, what I believe in my practice in different organizations and customers, that creating a privacy culture and creating privacy champion within an organization now is the high time to get there. Otherwise, what happens that if our house is not clean, that means our own people are not aware of what to be done. They cannot provide services to the end customer. So getting our guys ready and understanding that they understand privacy, they are trained, they're equipped, then only they can serve their customers better. But the same example goes to the air hostesses, right? So air hostesses are well groomed and well trained so that they can take care of the customers and the frequent flyers in the plane. So coming to the next one, we should understand that we never have done something new, right? Because we are in the growing path. We have business transformation, technology transformations. We have different kind of innovation that going on, and it will continue. And we have to rest assured as a practitioners from my side that privacy is never an inhibitor. It is always a kind of promoter, and it will give more and more safeguards and trust to the customers so that you can increase your customer base. You can get more customer satisfaction surveys. So hence, it is important for you that you have to understand what is your current privacy posture or the maturity level within your organization. You need not be shy in telling that I don't have. It is always better to tell, yes, I don't have, but I have a mindset to make it happen, right? So that you can understand your gaps and you can perform unified gap assessments. You can do the data privacy impact assessment in order to perform where are we, what are the recommendations, what can be done short-term, long-term to get into the privacy posture so that one time fix 9, like the concept is.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so we have a few questions from the audience. Let's take a couple of them since we are running short on time. Ramakant, there is this one. There are several old regulations which might contradict with DPDPA. How does one handle such conflicts?
Okay, so thanks for that question. I think it is very much well elaborated in the DPDP Act, but I will make it simple for audience to understand. There are 2 parts to that. So is privacy coming now? Whether the regulation coming now? Yes, it was enacted August 2023. So prior to that, what was happening to handling of personal data, right? So either it is health sector, it is financial sector, or it's IT sector. Still, we are running the business, we are growing economy, we are doing all that. So hence, there are an existence of sectoral laws which are protecting personal data as well. So hence, what DPDP Act has said, that means all the existing sectoral laws which are providing the protection of the personal data in their processing, they should all be respected, they should be all upheld, provided they have the highest level of controls more than what DPDP says. If they have the lowest level of controls which DPDP says, then DPDP Act comes in play. Because of that, if you look at that nicely, it is given at the end of the regulation telling that these are some of the regulations we respect. That means RBI Act, IT Act, Indian Evidence Act, and many acts where there is a provision, they have called out, and wherever there is a negation that to happen, they also have called out. So hence, there is no issue of existing regulations which are already providing the highest level of controls and mechanisms and safeguard to the personal data processing can continue with that alignment of DPDP whenever it is asked for to do the minimal compliance.
Thank you. This one is, I think, comes from a startup. I think most of our talk today was in some sense implying to large organizations. But here is one which says, how do you manage the DPDP impact for a new startup?
Okay. So good question. It is in the context of Indian trillion economy that whatever we have the vision to be in the number 3, right? So
Yes.
how can a country grows? Country can go through the innovations, and faster growth can happen through startups, and we break something, we make something, and finally we reach somewhere. So having said this, in the current scenario, there is a lot of push-up and a lot of push is there to encourage the startups to build their own kind of platforms and also provide Make in India. That means that is the mantra. So when the Make in India drive is there, then the startups has to be encouraged to do mistakes and have some kind of little bit of lower level of compliance than the other one. That doesn't mean that the basic requirements of health or kind of national security or in terms of the kind of high risk data or even security of the state, public order and electoral democracy, all these things should not be neglected. But however, there should not be additional binding, additional regulations that should be found on the startups because their funding may be low, they will have low manpower, and deliberately they're trying to do something new. So hence, what has happened in Indian context, which is unique to the other regulation in the world, is that they have divided into the data fiduciaries in 2 classes. One is fiduciary, one is significant data fiduciary. So what does that mean is based on some type of processing and some kind of volume of data and the nature of processing, so that has been segregated into 2 parts. So if the startups, they are not following under the criteria of the volume or the sensitive data processing, electoral democracy and all elsewhere, then they do not need to follow a lot of kind of obligation that is required. For example, if a common startup doesn't fall under significant data fiduciary, they need not appoint a data protection officer. They even need not bother to ensure that they have to have a consent manager in toto. They can share with some other consent managers. Then they need not perform a data audit, annual data audit. They may not perform data protection impact assessment for all the processing they want to do for high risk sensitive data. So these are some of the exemptions that can happen to them and in which it will promote them and they will go. But once there is some stage and they have that, then they will come back and they have to also abide by the significant data fiduciary. So in my view, it is a good kind of boost by the government or DPDP Act to promote economy, promote new entrepreneurs, and also ensure that we Make in India drive goes and it becomes successful. And it is a good insight from a practitioner point of view.
Awesome, thanks. I think we have time for one more question, and this seems to be this question seems to have been inspired by the long, elaborate talk you gave on consent management. Do we have any certification for becoming a consent manager?
Yeah, at this point of time, we do not have any consent manager because the consent manager concept is only prevalent in India, in Indian DPDP Act. So hence there is no consent manager, not consent manager certification available. But nevertheless, in future it might come, and hopefully it should come to govern and have pure governance. But how to become a consent manager? There are some criteria that has been laid down in the DPDP rules. According to that, a consent manager should be an entity which has to be incorporated in India. They should be based in India. They should have more than 2 crores of their revenue or net worth. And they should be qualified, technically qualified, financially qualified, and operationally qualified.
Right.
And they should have systems. They should have automation systems and processes in order to manage the consent of the data subject or users. They should be able to take the data from other data fiduciaries and able to process in a fair and in unbiased manner with a neutral manner. And they should be registered with the Data Protection Board of India as an independent kind of viewer, right? Because some of the data fiduciaries, they can have their own consent managers, but those consent managers inside also has to be registered, and they should not be doing anything else, only consent management. So ensuring that starting collection of the consent and withdrawal of the consent is throughout the journey has to be primary responsibility of the consent manager. Nevertheless, all the consent manager will have the data, personal data flowing through them. Hence, they are also liable to the data breach, and they are also liabilities as per the law to host them, because when they are processing the data by giving consent, they assume to the role of data fiduciary as well. So hence all the data fiduciary kind of obligations has to be raised in them, and there are no exemption to that. And they have to demonstrate at time to time how the consent manager is performing and what are the different kind of deviations they have adapted to. Sometimes if they are not doing according to the requirement, their registration can be cancelled. So that is my view, and it is a good concept, and it gives a lot of user trust for us, because an independent guy is managing for a consent, granular consent for a particular purpose, not misutilizing for compatible purposes, right? So it is good for the users, good for the citizens.
Thanks, Ramakant. I think those are interesting questions, a lot more interesting questions out here. Thank you all for putting in your questions. For all those unanswered questions, our data privacy professional services team will email the responses to you all, to the respective individuals. Thank you, Ramakant, for the excellent insights and in-depth explanation on how organizations should be prepared for DPDPA compliance. And for all those who attended the webinar, thank you so much for joining. We hope you found this webinar valuable, and we look forward to your participation in our upcoming ones. Thank you. The webinar is ended.
Thank you so much for participating and having the insights. Thanks once.